Good morning. It is a spectacular day. Pretty unbelievable considering it is now the 22nd of December. So the weather is truly bizarre, but I'm not complaining because it is dry, it is sunny, there is a slight breath of wind, but basically it's a really good day for outdoors welding. As you can see on the front, I have made some progress stripping down the bumper, the front lower panel, and generally poking around looking for rust. The other reason to strip the front down was to get the bonnet off, which is now unbolted. So while it's off, I'm going to weld up the hinges because they're knackered where they go onto the bonnet, or rather the bonnet's knackered where the hinges bolt to it, and hammer out the worst of that dent. Then I'm going to carry on with the bulkhead, and I might even start chopping out the windscreen if I have time. So that's the plan. I'm going to go get set up and then full steam ahead. I had a slight change of plan. I was going to carry on stripping down the front, but because the weather's so good, it makes sense to actually do anything that involves welding. So I'm going to get that as clean as I can, work out how much is surface rust and how much is good metal. How much is rot, how much is good metal, how much I need to chop out before I can weld my repair panel on top. I think I've used pretty much every single tool in my arsenal to do this. We've got air lines, grinder, sander, wire drill, and on the end of the airline I have my die grinder, but it just goes to show what a pain in the arse the access is. I've cleaned up back to bare metal all the way across. I've chopped out one section which I deemed, not good enough to weld onto. The rest of it is actually pretty good. There's one hole on the far side which I'm just going to snot up with the MIG when I get to it. That's the section I cut out. It was one small hole, but when you put the die grinder on it, most of the metal it just bounces off after it's taken the paint off. This bit it started to make holes, so I got the grinder in, and that's the back side. So it's still actually good metal. I mean, it's hard to break it or bend it in your hand, so that bodes well because it means that all the rest of it, which I've just cleaned the front side off, should be nice and solid. But yeah, it wouldn't have been worth trying to weld onto that. The next step is to make a patch to go into there. This I will actually try and do a semi-invisible repair to, because the repair panel gets welded onto that on a flange in sort of plug welds, so it needs to sit flat against it. So this front side will need to be flush. That's going to be lots of fun, not just the welding part, but actually dressing it afterwards, because it's an area where it's difficult to get the sander in. So I'll just have to be doubly careful when I make my welds that they're sitting as flat as I can get them. This is the sheet that I'm using to make panels from, or repair sections anyway. It's called Zinc, and it's basically mild steel that has zinc attached to it, but not through galvanizing, more from, I think, electrolysis. So it's not as good as galvanized, but the benefit is you can weld through it without poisoning yourself and getting sort of damage to your nervous system, which galvanizing tends to do. So that's what I'm making these panels out of. I've got a sheet of this in 0.9mm and 1.2. The bulkhead is about 0.8, and not just the bit that I've sanded, but actually good metal. Even with paint on it, still only about 0.8, 0.9. So this is ever so slightly thicker than what's in the car originally. So it's ideal. Just marked off the bit I'm going to cut. I'll nip that off the grinder, then dress the edges, check it for fit, and get my magnets out and tack it in place. That's my patch cut to size and just offered up with a magnet. Because I want this weld to sit flush, I've left quite a healthy gap around the edges. That means that I know the weld is penetrating between the patch and the actual bulkhead. So a lot of the material will be sitting in that hole, so that when I dress it back on the top, I know that I'm just sanding off excess and not stuff that's actually critical to strength. Because if you imagine that I had this, where are we? Yeah, like really butted up, if I welded, the weld would be sat on top of there, and then when I dress it flat, there's only a tiny little bit holding the two together, if at all. So yeah, just making a gap bigger around the edge. It's harder to weld because of course you could strike up with your weld and your wire disappears through the other side of the bulkhead, and if you do blow a hole, it takes longer to chase it. But yeah, hopefully I can get it right, get good penetration, dress it back and still have a strong panel. I thought I'd take a video at this stage, just if anyone's looking at doing this kind of work. I've used a couple of magnets just to get 4 good tacks in, and as soon as the tacks are on, I've got the magnets out of the way. But you can actually see that the weld is really nice and strong onto that panel, and that's what I mean about leaving a bit of a gap, because that weld actually fills in that void, so I can nip the top of that off and know I've got good material. I'm just going to work my way around there, and obviously starting at where the metal touches best and then filling in the larger areas, but being very mindful not to burn big holes through. So I'll probably chase this along as far as I can get before it starts all glowing orange and wanting to burn back, and then I'll pause a bit and then maybe tack that bit and, you know, just build it up progressively. That will go in there, it's just a trick of the camera. But the more care I seem to put into making the patches, the better the welding goes afterwards. I've kind of learnt that through experience. Just don't rush it. Try not to cut corners. Probably about halfway through now. I've done the easy bits, but there are a couple of places where this is just wanting to burn through, so you have to go super slowly. So that's why, although most of the actual weld is there, I'm only about half done, because the last bit's going to be really time consuming. There's one problem area, and that is down here. That bolt is to hold the heater matrix into the back side of the bulkhead, and I tried to remove it, but it was just spinning on the inside, and that I'm not going to be able to get to. So I couldn't take it off, but behind it is an area which doesn't want to weld very nicely, so I'm going to have to get the die grinder back in there and munch back to clean metal, and then try again. The other problem is that there's some kind of sealer behind the washer and the bulkhead which likes to burn, so as soon as you weld, that sets fire and creates gases which then get rid of your shielding gas from the MIG welder, so it's just making for really farty nasty welds. So yeah, I'm going to clean it up as best I can and then just persevere. Okay, just run the wire brush over that whole area. That is the annoying sealer I was telling you about. So I'm going to have to get in there with a screwdriver, like a jeweler's screwdriver, and just move all of that out of the way, because otherwise it's never going to weld. So yeah, back in a minute. Ta-da! Took a while. Got messy this end because some of it was real thin and going through, but it's there. I've also slotted up over there as well. So yeah, job's a good one. Noah learning to drive in his dad's Mini as well, which is quite entertaining. Yeah, hopefully that's not going to end in tears. Gonna just nip that back a bit so it's flush. This looks really horrible through this camera, but actually I'm pretty happy with that. I've also nipped that back over there, so we have a nice solid flat surface, so all is good. It's also good that Noah hasn't crashed his dad's car yet. Fingers crossed it stays that way. Right, that's my repair panel, which I haven't yet cleaned up, but that will go over the top like so. My plan was to do all of that today because the weather's so good for welding, but I've realised that that is going to be in long-term contact with water, and once that's welded on, I'm not going to be able to get to it to treat it with anything. So I'm going to now clean that back to bare metal and then paint it with Jotun 87, which is like a 2-pack epoxy. That means, and I'll also do the backside of this at the same time. That means that when that's welded on, even though I can't get in there, it's all nicely protected. So although it's annoying not to be able to finish that welding job today, it's going to make for a better long-term repair. Right, you can really see why these things rusted out. This paint is barely stuck on at all. So as soon as you touch it, just flies off in great big patches. So yeah, no wonder. I mean, that's just stupid. It's an area that's gonna fill with water, so yeah, dumb. I'm glad I'm gonna epoxy it now. Noah has now graduated to Vauxhall Astras. Still no accidents, good to see. This is my repair panel, just been cleaning it up. I've found a few bits that are going to need little spots of weld, just to make sure it's preserved. There's one of them. So I'm going to take it inside, put it in the blast cabinet and get that really clean. Parking lesson. Going well. Anyway, I'm also going to trim off the upper section of this, because obviously I don't need all of it. It's going to make for a better weld again if I chop this top flange off where I've marked it, because that will sit right in the back of here and hopefully be quite neat, and I can seam seal over the top and it'll look good. That's my panel. I've put it in the sandblaster and then I've attached it with a wire wheel. So where there were pockets of rust, all of that's gone now and it's just left the pockmark surface. By the time this has got epoxy on it, it's not going to rust, so happy with that. Just got to repair this bit and then I'll prep it and paint it along with the bulkhead. I've done some more prep on this area. I've just trimmed out this a bit higher, just below where that scribed line is. That's where my new repair panel is going to come up to. I've then degreased it. I'll come back out here and give a good key on there, because the Jotun 87 likes a good key. It just delaminates of any sort of smooth surfaces, so it's important that, particularly if you've used a high-speed drill with a wire wheel, that tends to polish the metal. So you've got to go back over and key it nicely, give the epoxy something to mechanically bind into. Right, this is the other part. You can see I've already given it a good key. It was polished up with the drill, but now it's got, I've got over it with the grinder with quite an aggressive disc on, so that's perfect for the epoxy. What I need to do now is hammer that flange flat, because obviously that's going to go on the bulkhead. I don't want to do that after I've epoxied it, so yeah, just going to tap it on the vise and get a smooth flat flange. Panel all prepped, a nice flat edge and no high points around where I drilled out those spot welds. That will get welded on like so. So it's going to be a neat repair compared with what I was faced with to start. I'm going to epoxy all of that now, and epoxy the back side of this, and then where the plug welds are going to go through, before the epoxy is fully cured, I'm just going to put a drill through just to clean up the surface on there, so that when I'm welding I'm going straight through onto metal. And then I'll go through all of those plug welds, all of those spot weld holes with the MIG and plug weld them in, and that'll be that done. But annoyingly, although I would have liked to have done it today, it makes sense to do all the prep work but leave the welding for another day when the epoxy's actually had a chance to go off, which is a shame because it's December and I don't know when I'm going to next get a day with such good sunlight, dry, and yeah, I'll have to wait till January, I guess. Right, this is the epoxy I'm using. It's Jotomastic. It's built like that, 87, standard grade. You basically get it in winter or summer grade. I'm using the standard, which is summer. This stuff is an epoxy mastic. Well, I think it's from the marine or offshore oil industry, but people are starting to use it on classic cars as well. Basically, it's incredibly hard, very good adhesion when you have a keyed surface. You get the main component stuff, and then you get the hardener. You get instructions on how to mix it by volume, which I've just done some rough counts. Then you basically mix it. I'm using one of those graduated paint mixing things, so it's got the divisions on the side. Once you've mixed the two, you have to leave it for 10 minutes to start curing, and then you can paint it on. So I'm just going to wait now, and then I'll go out to the car and slap a bit of that on. Well, I've got the first, well, I think I'm only going to do one coat of that Jotun 87. I've done it quite thick, where I'm not going to be able to get access later, and then thinner around the outside, because the plan is once all that welding is done, it's going to need dressing, and the front side will need to be painted. So I'll do the whole front face of the bulkhead at that time. But since I had so much paint already mixed up, I went over that patch I put in the other day, so that's all nicely protected, and I went right down to where I had some surface rust near the steering column, and then up into there as well. Like I said, that'll all get a proper treatment once I've finished the welding. And because I still had some left in my pot, I did the headlight and front grille brackets. They're just there drying. Still got those left, but it's got a bit thick and tacky, so it's not brushing out very nicely. So yeah, that's that. Next plan is to start on the bonnet, because I don't really want to do any more work in that area because I'll get stuff on the paint before it dries. So yeah, I'm going to crack on with the bonnet. Right, yeah, just had the first proper look at the bonnet. The hinges are actually good, and it's where they mount to that has completely gone, particularly on the offside. Near side isn't so bad, but it's, you know, it's going that way. If I can, to save time, complication and general faffage, I want to try and just reinforce this. So obviously this bonnet is scrap, but it would be nice to have it on the car for the moment. I don't really want to have to take the hinges off, because I wouldn't mind betting the captive threads will just spin and break, but yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it without doing that, because obviously I could just weld a big plate across there and down here, but it's, you know, I need to be picking up on where the captive threads are. So yeah, I'm going to unbolt that one and see what I'm left with. Okay, got that hinge off. One of the captive threads just tore straight out, so I have got to include that in my repair panel to go on. This is a real ugly repair, but I don't really care because it's going to be quick. That's my repair bandage. That's the captive that rotted off, so I've ground off the rust and then welded it on the back of my plate. I've lined it all up so the holes match, and I'm just going to snot it on there. It's gonna basically be a horrific repair. This flange I've left long, and I'm just gonna beat it round over what's left of rusty metal here, and hopefully it'll stay on there. This side, I'm not even going to take the hinge off. I'm literally going to put a plate across the bottom there just to stiffen it up a bit. All of this has been done out of my 1.2mm steel sheet, so hopefully it'll be strong enough. I won't really know till it's on the car and it's got the full weight of the bonnet and also the little gas struts. So yeah, if it needs further work, it's not going to be the hardest thing to just take it back off and put some more plates on. Stage 1 complete. It is a real horror show, but it's on there. It's really very stiff, which surprises me. So now I just need to put a bit under there. I'm going to do it as quick as possible because miraculously this black Jotun paint still hasn't actually gone off. So if I can get on that now, I'll slap some black on it and should be good. Patch number 2 is on. I'm just gonna paint all black now and then start packing up the tools for the end of the day. It's been a good day. I hadn't actually done the full bulkhead, which is what I wanted to do, but I think stopping to get the epoxy on was actually probably quite a good idea. Yeah, I'm just hoping weather stays good over the next period to allow me to actually get that welded in and get on with the windscreen surround, which I'm dying to do, because once that's done, once this bonnet is balanced back on and I've got well, quite a lot of the front end back together, it'll look like an actual, you know, proper candidate for a MOT. So yeah, fingers crossed.